Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to Discovery with DC. I'm excited to have a special guest with us this morning, Miss Katie Stedman with Tribe. This morning we're going to be sharing a principle with you that's been extremely just impactful to me and to the Diamond C team over the last several years. So Katie is the creator of Tribe, which is a leadership and personal development coaching firm that specializes in Gallup strengths training. So when I first met Katie, she worked here in Mount Pleasant as the CEO of the local Chamber of Commerce. And that's the time period when she became a certified Gallup strengths coach. So Katie, can you tell us kind of how you got started with strengths coaching and why?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on today. I'm excited to talk about my very favorite subject. But yeah, so back when I was the CEO of the Chamber, I had started heading up the Mount Pleasant Leadership Program, which allowed leaders from all over our community to come together, learn more about the community itself, and invest in their own leadership skills. And I had become introduced to the Clifton Strengths Assessment back in, I believe it was 2011, by an employer of mine. And she kind of introduced me to the concept of this assessment, unveiling to an individual what their greatest strengths are, how to apply them within an organization. And so as I was thinking about this leadership Mount Pleasant program, I thought, boy, that would be a great way to kick off the leadership program so that these participants can all go, wow, this is what I bring to the table as a leader, both within this program and in the greater context of their positions throughout the community. And so we brought in a coach. We allowed them to spend a day really investigating their strengths, understanding their strengths. And after that was over, I started thinking about the fact that we had 500 businesses that were members of the Chamber that all have employees that could perhaps benefit from really understanding what their strengths are. And so I went to our board of directors and said, what would you think about me becoming a certified strengths coach so that internally, as part of the Chamber, we can offer this as a service to our members, where I get to go in and help coach CEOs, coach managers, and coach teams so that we would have 500 businesses perhaps impacted by engaging their employees on a higher level, helping leaders understand themselves and their employees better. And then that's a value added to our members that they don't have to pay much extra for, and that allows the Chamber then to have an additional revenue stream, creating great value on both sides. So that's kind of where it started.
Yeah, I know that's how I got involved then. Is I was one of those, I guess one of those employers. And I first took the assessment in, I had to dig through my email and find, it was early 2017. And then we did our first team training event in July of 2017.
Love it.
So almost 3 years ago. And really for me, I remember that first experience with it just being really clarifying, you know, just unveiling. And for me at the time, and just the journey, my journey in leadership and even the company, was a big realization of why I was the way I was, why what we were doing at the time wasn't necessarily working very well. We were getting a lot of work done and a lot of great progress being made, but it was just really hard to get it done. So it really helped me, it just brought that clarity. And I think, is that what you would typically see in a person or an organization's first go round with strengths training, or what's the response usually like the first time they go through it?
Yeah, so kind of the way I like to approach organizations is exactly what we did, where I get the chance to sit down one-on-one with the head person, the person that's going to set the tone for how well this is really adopted throughout the organization. Because if the person that's in charge isn't fully bought in, we don't usually see systemic cultural change. And so often when I get the opportunity to sit down with, say, a CEO of a company and we get to talk through their strengths, there are a lot of aha moments that occur, where exactly like you said, they start realizing why things are happening the way they're happening within the company, usually because of why they lead the way they lead. And sometimes they realize how effective they're being, and sometimes they realize how these great pockets of talent that they possess are also the places where they are their most vulnerable in their leadership style. And so those first conversations are the, oh my goodness, now I understand the why behind the what that's happening across the organization. So yes, when people understand that, and then like you did, really embrace it and decide to invest intentionally in developing those talents into strengths, understanding the pros and cons, starting to figure out how can I harness and hone my strengths to become a more effective leader, then you start seeing the stage really being set for the next tier as we introduce this further kind of down the totem pole within the organization for those leaders to have the same mentality of embracing and understanding who they are.
Yeah. Man, so you know my top 5
I do.
well, since you've been through it a lot of time. So, and these words may be Greek to some of the listeners now, but so my top 5 strengths are activator, command, connectedness, belief, and ideation. And of course, you witnessed a lot of the evolution of those strengths here.
Yes.
But I wanted to ask you, can you explain how that combination might go wrong with an individual or leader of a company?
Sure.
That combination of activator and command, particularly activator, command, connectedness, belief, ideation.
Yes, absolutely. And for people who are going, what the heck do these words mean? When you have the opportunity to take the assessment, essentially what happens is you get a list of these 34 words in an order that's specific to who you are. Each of them has a definition, each of them has an application. And as you start unveiling kind of the meat behind these definitions, you start understanding, like we said a moment ago, why you lead or think or approach relationships the way that you do. And so now you have language that clearly defines these talents that you use to show up in your day-to-day life. So I actually am very happy to discuss yours because I do it. Like every session that I ever go to, he is my star client because I've seen, as you said, the evolution of how you've really dug into moving these things from areas that may have caused friction or challenge into an area that's actually benefiting you leading the charge at your company. So let's just talk about a couple of them. The ones I always pick on when you're not around in the room, but you know I do this, is activator, ideation, and command. So quick overview, activators are quick to act. They are impatient people. Yes.
I would never.
They want to get started. They want to talk less, do more. They would rather put their thoughts into actions quickly. They're catalytic, very motivating. Let's get things started, which is an incredible thing for a company. Ideation is another one, and it's one that I love talking about. So people who have high ideation are kind of like founts of inspiration, constantly coming up with another way to do something, a new idea. They love a good whiteboarding session. They love to brainstorm. Yes, brainstorming all the time. I can't tell you how many times Jeffrey said, just an idea, just a thought. I haven't thought this all the way through yet, but here's a new idea that we have. Let's do it now. Exactly. That activator is ready to help out that ideation. But lots of great problem-solving ideas that come from ideation. And then command. These people have a presence about them. They are quick to take charge. They're happy to lead the way. They can bring people along towards an idea or a concept that maybe they're not sure about initially. People with command are happy to say, no, I'm confident this is the direction that we're going. So all of those things together are incredible ingredients for a powerful leader. Until they're not. Just like everybody's strength, there is that tipping point where we move into a more challenged example of them. And so in your case, I think when we met, you were starting to see some of the challenges of those strengths where perhaps you had a ton of ideas, lots of different ways to improve Diamond C, to innovate, to move things forward, to come up with new products. And you were, I think at that point, activating all of them at the same time. Here's a great new idea. Here we go, launching all of the planes. And because of your command, you were able to easily gain followership towards whatever these new goals were going to be, which again is great and has potential to really be innovative and move the company forward. But as we had further discussions, you realized that although you're great at starting, you're not so great necessarily at finishing.
Exactly.
You love to start and get the planes launched, celebrate, and move on to the next thing. And so when we're in a company, though, we have to be able to land planes. We have to make sure that at some point ownership passes from the person who thought of the idea and started the idea to someone who can create a system of keeping those things in place and then actually bring them through to fruition.
Right.
And so you were having all of these great things that potentially would be good for the company, but were actually kind of causing a lot of internal confusion and frustration with team members who were like, well, I thought we were doing this, and now he's over here, and now we're doing this.
Right.
And so I think it was needing to be maybe just honed in a little bit, toned down a little bit. But the beauty of strengths is that we never wanted you to stop being who you were.
Right.
We never wanted to say, nix that, start becoming a slow-moving, deliberative, thoughtful finisher, because that's not how you're designed to be effective. And so once we were able to talk through those things, we're able to move you from a place of it being a place of liability or weakness into getting you over to a place of power and edge that actually benefited you and the company with a whole lot less frustration.
Right, right. And that's where I think we found so much value in it as an organization was, and for me personally, is learning to manage it. So the things that are my top five, my strengths, where they bring value and where they need to be balanced. They're all high influence things, you know, and where when we started looking around, did this team assessment, it became really clear that I was one of the only ones on the team with high influence, but because of that, I needed that high execution around me. I needed the people around me that would really think through the details of how we're going to land the plane, that example. So that level of awareness really enabled us to build a more complete, higher performing team. And it, you know, it wasn't, as I'm sure you see often, it wasn't an overnight transition. You know, it was really a couple of years long, that process of us, you know, becoming aware of one another's strengths and weaknesses, and then learning how to balance those things together for a complete team, you know, a well-balanced, complete team. And you know, one of the other things that I think it gives us is a lot of mercy with one another.
Yes. Grace.
Yes, grace and mercy with one another. You know, they know that's they know, you know, my team knows that I'm high in ideation and high in activator. You know, so they know how to take it when I walk in with a new idea for the day.
They all roll their eyes.
And I know their strengths, you know, so I understand, I have a bit more insight into the way they move and think and why, just like they do for me. You know, it gives us this mutual respect and understanding for one another that allows us to collaboratively get a lot more done.
Absolutely,
you know?
yes. Well, and it gives teams a shared language, which I mentioned before. You know, you have a language to internally understand what's happening when you are driven to create a new idea. You can go, oh my gosh, that's my ideation in action right now. And if it's not serving you in that moment, if it's not time to come up with 25 new ideas, now you can go, okay, ideation, I'm going to tone you down, I'm going to put you in timeout for a little bit while I focus on maybe executing these other programs or really digging in and focusing where my attention needs to be. And so you have that language, but then when you roll this out across an organization, everybody goes through this assessment, and then I'm also able to identify the strengths of others, like you just said, and actually name it. So instead of being like, God, why is that person so slow? Why do they have to think through everything when I just want to go and take action? Perhaps they have deliberative in their top five. And that actually is something that can be extremely beneficial if we understand its purpose and function. Maybe that person that's going to slow you down and really think about things circumspectly before moving forward will be the perfect balance to you going, let's go now. In fact, yesterday would have been better. And so you can avoid the areas of friction that are often present when you're in a room full of people that you don't necessarily understand. And as you said, you have so much more grace and understanding, and you get the best out of that person when you stop trying to speed them up, when actually slow is where they're powerful. And we don't want you to go slow because fast is where you're powerful. But the balance, the understanding, the strengthening of that talent is what we want everybody to lean into, and then everybody kind of excels and rises together.
That's so much, why I fell in love with StrengthsFinder. Similar to you and your story is it's so empowering.
It is.
No matter what your top 5 strengths are, it's so empowering because it helps you to understand, like we mentioned earlier, why you are the way you are, and what Gallup does such a good job with, and especially with your coaching backing it up, even more so, is helping people to understand how to leverage those strengths for their peak performance, and not just peak performance in their job or at work, but in life, really.
Absolutely.
In life. It's been transformational for me and for so many people here. It's not, and I would say, and you can speak to also, it's not like so many other assessments out there that try and fit you into one of these 4 boxes.
Right. Absolutely. And I love all of the personal assessment, personal leadership growth assessments that are out there because they all have their function and their purpose. But strengths has become by far my favorite for exactly that reason. Because, in some of the other ones, maybe you're an extrovert and I'm an extrovert when we take our assessments. Well, therefore, on some level, we're assumed to both think and function the same way because we share this label that's been slapped on us. And while there are words that you could maybe think are labeling from the strengths assessment, really what it does is it just highlights and accents what you are, so you have something to call it instead of using it as a way to predict your behavior or assume that you and everybody else who shares that has the same motivation, same background, same thinking, same execution. And so the likelihood, and we've talked about this all the time, and I just fall in love with the number every time I hear it, is the likelihood that any other person who takes the assessment would have just your top 5 out of 34, your top 5 strengths in the same order, is 1 in 33 million people. So it's very, very unique to who you are. To think about maybe 10 other people in the United States are going to have Jeffrey Crabb's top 5. There's value there. There's value in understanding what those are, and it's kind of a travesty when people don't know what they are, and we don't have the opportunity to leverage them and let you bring that fully, no strings attached, into this workplace.
That's right. So we've talked through some of the different stories and things from Diamond C already, but I just wanted to ask you what it was like to watch the transformation over the last few years, and if you had any kind of favorite stories of transformation or impact that you witnessed here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we alluded to a little while ago, kind of the way we rolled this out across the company was you and I met first, and you obviously completely bought in, which you're like I said before, you're just the model CEO because you are. Because that's really what sets the tone and makes it possible for an entire company to adopt cultural change, is the leader has to be all in. So if you're listening and you're a leader, you have to be all in order for your company to be able to transform from the top down. And so after we met, then we started meeting with leadership teams kind of throughout different departments, and then rolling it kind of one level at a time down throughout the ranks. And so we were able to get leaders under Jeffrey to all buy in, and then they were able to go to their teams, and we were able to work with their teams and get them to buy in, and so it just kind of continued to trickle its way down throughout the company. And so it really was amazing to start listening as I'm kind of in this consulting role, flitting in and out, and hearing conversations that were just organically happening throughout the company. If I would hear people over in a corner talking about a problem, and then suddenly they would start talking about how their strengths were impacting that particular situation of, oh, Jeffrey's ideation did this today, or my deliberative, or this person's relator is really helping us build the camaraderie within the team that we need, or I realize that I need to really invest more time in this particular strength of mine so that I can see it work more effectively for me. And so when I started hearing those conversations, I knew that we were really doing what needed to be done, because people were bringing it on themselves. It wasn't something that was being implemented that they had to then just deal with and listen to and then forget about. It was being internalized.
It became natural,
It did, and that's often something that's hard in companies, because they think about a program like this as being one more thing that they have to do, one more thing that the HR department has to oversee or somebody has to spearhead, and people are worn out and stretched thin, and so they don't usually see something like this all the way out to the place where they're having organic conversations with employees, understanding that this has really created internal change for them. And so it was really neat to start seeing that, because people were becoming more intentional about how they would aim their strengths at their role in order to help Diamond C succeed. And so within those companies, I think some of my favorite moments were just times where a certain manager would come to me and go, hey, so-and-so on my team is really struggling in this area. Could we sit down and look at their strengths together? And then after I have a better understanding of who they are and what they might need from me, could we then bring that person in and have, a one-on-two conversation where we're really able to address the challenges that they are facing from this angle of strength and empowerment, instead of, here's what's wrong with you, and here's what we need you to fix in order for you to keep your job. It's, we understand that this is an area of challenge. How can we look at what you bring to the table so naturally and so powerfully and allow you to make adjustments that are more in line with who you naturally are? There was one of your managers who was new to the role, which, going from skilled employee to manager is a big jump. And there's a lot of challenge that comes with that. And so this particular guy had been excelling in his role on the line. He was a welder.
Right.
Suddenly he was a overseer of other people. And one of his top 5 strengths was intellection. Intellection people love to have time alone, to think, a lot of time alone. Like in his report, it literally said 4 to 5 hours a day of thinking is what this person needs. Now, you would have gone insane, 30 minutes in of sitting still and thinking, right? But this person needed that time, and when they weren't allowed that time, they were starting to get frustrated, and they were asked to make all of these on the spur of the moment decisions, and that was totally against how this person was wired. And so we were able to have those kind of conversations of how do we build an environment where this person can have that time to think, or is perhaps the management position not the best place for them to be right now until they can really grow through these areas and understand more of what they need to be effective before we put these additional responsibilities on them. And so we were starting to have conversations like that where you're looking at people for who they truly are through a lens of strength instead of deficiency, and able to make adjustments here and there to position them to be their most powerful. And when a company is smart enough, like Diamond C is, to say, hey, when we give a person space and time to be exactly who they are, and we get the best out of them, everybody wins, because that person is performing at a higher level, which then brings up everyone. And that's what you start seeing across Diamond C, and that's been what's been really great to see over the past couple of years.
It's so valuable. I think in answering that question myself, it's a couple of stories that I won't go into all the details, but 2 key team members that are still here today that we got so close to losing. They were in roles where one as example, his number 1 is futuristic. He was a valuable team player. He was a hustler, just contributing a lot of value to the team. But the just role and kind of scenario he was in, he had really no vision for the future of his role. He had no idea, and it became clear he was looking to the greener grass on the other side. He was beginning to look for other opportunities. He had one foot out the door, and then just in time, thank God, just in time, the strengths assessment came, and the team collaboration came on it, and we're going, ooh, we better get him a vision of the future. And I remember, one day in a lunch meeting, he and I went to lunch at Nardello's one day, and in that one conversation really addressed that lack of futuristic view that he wasn't getting here, and just kind of blew the doors off of that. Here's what could be, here's what we're thinking, here's a direction. He latched onto it and ran hard with it, and it's been transformational for him and for the company.
Yes, and you didn't lose key talent.
No. I mean, that's the thing. He had so much tenure and experience here already. It would have been just a shame. A shame. So that's one of those stories why this has been just so impactful for us as a team. And keeping our gifts and talent together. Together and being used in a highly impactful and effective way.
Absolutely.
For sure. So getting ready to wrap up here, but I know that Gallup publishes all kinds of stats on why strength training is so effective, but I wanted to just add, what do you say? I mean, you've seen it on the front lines, you've trained hundreds, maybe thousands, hundreds for sure, of people and leadership teams from companies all across Texas and I don't know where all, but many different companies. So why do you say it's so effective?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can quote some of those statistics because I've actually seen them happen. So what you just described of preventing talent from walking out the door, that's one of the things that Gallup loves to talk about in this, and the core of strengths training really within a company is to increase employee engagement. Because when you have a group of people that are partially engaged in their jobs, you're not getting the best out of them, they're not giving the best, they're not super happy with their work, they would rather be somewhere else, maybe even just at home, and you're not going to excel as a company when your people are partially checked out. And you know, statistically, about 15% of the American workforce is considered actively engaged, which means 85% of an average workforce is wishing they were somewhere else. Slightly checked out or actively checked out, like your employee was, who was kind of searching for something else, where they're not thinking about what's in front of them. They're thinking about how to get the heck out of Dodge. And so when you change the narrative and the experience where you say, hey, we see you as a human being outside of just your role here within the company, and we want to invest in you. We want to understand what makes you incredibly unique and what talents you bring to the company, and we want to give you space to be able to bring those to the table. There's going to be a whole new level of engagement that comes from that, and you see turnover go way down. And we all know that hiring new talent is incredibly expensive. It's time consuming, it loses momentum, you have to train culture, you have to build relationship, and so that's one of the key impacts of having a strengths-based culture is employee engagement goes up. Often they say about 6 times within companies, and what I love about it too is that employees often even end up reporting a higher quality of life in general, that it doesn't just stay here. But when your employee who's had a great day, who isn't burned out by the end of the day, who isn't hating life every time they're here from 8 to 5, when they go home, they actually have something left to give to their family. And so that benefits their overall quality of life. Profitability and productivity, we usually see those go up dramatically, because when engagement goes up, you're more productive, which in turn equates to more profitability. I know Diamond C had big surges in growth after implementing this.
Absolutely.
And those are just the natural outgrowths. And what I like about this, I know companies are very bottom line focused, but in my world, I'm human focused. And so what I like is that these things are natural outgrowths of investing in the people that you've been entrusted with. And as a CEO, you know, you need to take that seriously. And again, I commend you for the work that you've done, because you have decided that the most important part of Diamond C are the people that are inside. And then you've been able to be benefited by the fact that they're well taken care of, because they want to give more and they have the energy and capacity to give more, because they're all now functioning from a place of strength and ability. And we know that when you're operating from something you're naturally good at, it's way easier to be phenomenal at it than to try to approach that same project thinking, oh, I need to do it this way. I need to be Jeffrey in order to be successful. I need to be so-and-so. But when you are authentically showing up to your work and having strengths feedback from your employer saying, man, I love that your ideation showed up big time today. It gave us that idea we were looking for. That employee is going to go, I'm coming back tomorrow and I'm going to do it again, because they see me and they appreciate me.
For sure. That's so true. It is so much a journey, though.
It is.
You know, it's like, as I listen to you talk, I realize and I acknowledge we've made huge strides the last few years, so much progress, but I also, you know, think through how much more we can do with it, how many more lives we can impact. You know, we were, I would say, relatively successful with really embracing strengths throughout the leadership team and all the office staff and in several of the production departments, but there's still many to go, you know, to really work through what their strengths are and empower them to bring the most value they can to the team and operate right within that realm of their God-given strengths and abilities.
Absolutely.
That, you know, where they effortlessly perform at their best.
Yes.
Which is what we're driving for.
Yeah.
So the purpose of this video series is really to offer viewers ideas and concepts and things that they can use to fuel their growth and success. So I want to make sure that we provide clear information and next steps to them, to anyone that wants to explore strengths discovery for themselves or for their teams, their organization, whatever that looks like. And of course, like we mentioned earlier, you're in Austin now, but I know you travel and that you also can provide a lot of value online through technology. So that said, can you just kind of tell us what you're up to these days and how people can get in touch with you, reach out, how you might be able to help them get started on a strengths discovery journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of set me on the trajectory that I'm currently on by being one of our, no, thank you, no, that's a good thing, but by being one of the first companies that I had the opportunity to work with. And so since then, I've been essentially duplicating the work that we've been doing here at Diamond C across the state of Texas mostly, and then with individual clients kind of around the country, where we have the opportunity to go in and work with the senior leadership team, get them bought in, start rolling it out across their company. And this isn't something that is just effective within large corporations. You know, I love it when large corporations really dig in, but I love working with those small companies too, where it's one or two people. It's one person. Yes, it's one person. That I had a client just this week who lives in New York. He works at home mostly. He's in an IT department, but it's kind of just him. And he was able to look at his strengths and go, oh my gosh, I see how I can transform my role. And so whether it's go ahead.
And I would say, I wish, or if I had it to do all over again, that I wish I would have had this language and this empowerment and this knowledge when Diamond C was a much smaller company to start with.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's why I would absolutely recommend it. Sorry to interrupt, but I would absolutely recommend it to no matter how small the organization is or even the individuals, because it just gives you such a strong foundation to build on and can save you so much pain and suffering and learning it the hard way.
Right. Well, it takes more time. Like you said, this is an ongoing process, and it is. This is not something that you start and you're like, we're done, everybody's operating in their strengths, we're finished. This is something that people want to embrace and have as a continuation of their story. As they bring on new people, they're onboarding them through strengths. We're creating a culture that needs to be nourished and invested in. So this isn't a one silver bullet, we're done. It requires people being willing to invest, and that's kind of what my role is to help kickstart it and then help develop systems and processes that allow people to let it live on. And those are some of the things I'm working through now, especially in our COVID world that we're living in. You know, I'm starting to build some courses that will allow maybe mid-level management, once they've embraced this, to have a vault of resources that they can go through and really get trained on the intricate details of strength, so that they almost become in-house coaches that they can then roll this out to their direct reports and really let it continue to live and grow within the company. So however I can help companies create a healthy culture and transform the environment of a workplace, that's what I am all in for doing.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for the impact that, for kicking that journey off here at Diamond C, and the impact you have fueled the growth and success of everyone that works here and thousands of people across the country as a result of that. Just massive impact. And so thank you for that. Thank you for joining us today. And with that, thank you all for joining us today. And if you found value in this content today, I just want to ask you to share it, subscribe to our channel. We're going to continue doing our very best to bring content to you that fuels your growth and success, the Diamond C community across the nation and North America. So with that, thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.